Shocker! Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game.
Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA recently received a harsh reality check. In times of crisis, ratings are declining more quickly than a Stephanie White-coached squad. The story of historical progression appears to be a poor marketing tagline after just one groin injury. Can this league make it through even a month without its biggest draw? What do you think? When Clark is not performing, does anyone actually pay attention to the other?
And that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad. We're talking about down in unrivaled territory.
This is the setup, then. This year, the league had a secret recipe for high TV ratings. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. That's all. Their cash cow matchup was that one. Indiana Fever versus Chicago Sky. To figure it out, you didn't need marketing experts in a conference room. Only 5 times in a single season do 2 of the most well-known names appear on the same court.
The ratings I'm about to share with you guys, they're not bad. Matter of fact, some of them are actually good, at least when compared to what this dump used to draw, which was nothing. But the reason I think the WNBA is in trouble has less to do with these ratings and more to do with what I think is coming.
The issue is that your stars will leave if you don't safeguard them. Clark has had a groin issue that has kept him out for a month and a day. Soft tissue, the kind that requires time to recover rather than being patched up and left in place. For the past week and a half, Rhea has been absent. Therefore, neither of the WNBA's golden ticket players were present on the court during this past Saturday's so-called golden game. Oh yeah, the outcomes showed that these 2 teams had the lowest ratings since Caitlin Clark joined the league. Low, but not below average. Rock bottom. Even last year's numbers are beyond our comprehension. Low. Out of mind and out of sight. Since the figures explain the whole tale, let's go over them. First gathering of the year. Enormous. ABC had an average viewership of 2.7 million, with a peak of 3.1 million. That is 115% higher than the ABC season average from the previous year. It had been the ideal storm. The infamous probe, Clarksville controversy, her triple-double, and the destruction of the Sky. That game was the catalyst. The second encounter was a step down but still strong. CBS primetime is at 8 p.m. One of the most watched WNBA regular season games since 2001, with 1.92 million viewers. It was the 8th largest in more over 2 decades at the time. The promise of having both stars on the floor, or at least its power, lies in that. The drop-off started to get ugly after the 3rd meeting on ABC. 1.5 million, down from 2.7 million to 1.9 million. That amounts to 1.22 million individuals saying, "Nope, I'm fine," and not returning for the 3rd round. And keep in mind that I discussed this at the time. That game was the least watched Fever vs. Sky showdown since last year's 1.53 million, with an average of 1.5 million viewers. By the way, that's while Clark is still playing. Let's go on to this past Saturday. They failed to reach 1.4 million viewers despite having the same primetime schedule, network, and matchup, CBS. Try 1.3 million, which indicates that more than 500,000 people watched without the Clark pass. Thus, this headline clash dropped 1.4 million views between May 22nd and August 10th. Furthermore, that isn't a slight seasonal decline. In terms of TV, that is disastrous. That tendency is hated by networks. That is a tendency that advertisers detest. Kathy Angelbert detests that trend, I can assure you. The problem is that the Fever loses its national appeal without Clark. Fans aren't paying attention to Kelsey Mitchell's ISO performances. They won't change their plans for Lexi Hull's weekend. Additionally, they are definitely not observing the officiating circus that we see at every game.
Had August 12th as the circled return date for Caitlin Clark to get back onto the court, and just yesterday she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, like, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing, so they changed it from a game time decision to her being out.
What then occurs? The WNBA becomes frantic. Whispers begin to echo, hey, Fever, could you tease A? Simply hang it in front of the people to see Caitlin Clark return. Please provide us with something to raise these figures again. It's a play straight out of the manual on PR desperation. Perform for the crowd without really giving plays.
That's going on with Caitlin Clark's injuries, especially a star player like that. We will never know all the information, nor should we know all the information, and that's actually good for Caitlin. It protects her for when she does come back on the court. She can't be targeted. Teams can't use a certain injury or ailment against her if people don't really know what is going on. But the reporting of her timeline in general, there has been no rhyme or reason to what has been shared about it. To put her as a game time decision for today's game, and then Coach Stephanie White basically coming out and saying she has done no practicing with the team, that's crazy. And I brought it up in my video yesterday.
Here's the catch, though. You shouldn't recover quickly from Clark's injuries unless you wish to take a chance on a chronic retire.
Back in the mix when all of these teams are at peak condition, and we already know what happens when Caitlin Clark gets back out on the court. Teams play defense on her differently. They play extra physical with her. There's all of these different factors that come into play. That's why I'm sort of leaning to the point of maybe Caitlin should be out for the rest of the season. Maybe this season is just done for her. Maybe it doesn't make sense for her to come back into the mix if the Fever aren't contenders. Are the Fever contenders at this point? I'm just not so sure. Do you risk another injury that can again compound and turn into something?
And you would think a league that relies on her so heavily would, genuinely shield her in the first place because of their TV importance. However, this is what occurs when you permit officiating that treats your biggest draw like a novice walk-on at an open gym, continual targeting, and inconsistent whistles. And don't believe that this simply applies to Fever games. Let's look at the figures for the games that don't feature Clark. 180,000 viewers on Sunday compared to Sunday. Mercury vs. Dream, 160,000. At least 300,000 NBA TV viewers would be expected if growth is as significant as the League and Players Association would have you think. At least 250,000. However, without the Caitlin Clark stimulus package, they aren't even reaching $200,000. This is essentially a stimulus package for the league as a whole. Numbers rise as Clark plays. Numbers crater is where Clark sits. Additionally, the WNBA has been depending so much on her that they appear vulnerable without her. Furthermore, the league wasn't blind to this development. From day one, there were warning indications. Your most valuable athlete in terms of ratings and marketability is receiving less calls than a telemarketer in airplane mode and taking more hits than the majority of NFL wide receivers. Landing space infractions are disregarded. Drivers ignore arm grabs. The rim has obvious hacks. Go ahead and play. Now consider if Paige Buers would still be playing today if Clark had the same whistle. Yes, I would say. There wouldn't be this August ratings death spiral, and the Fever would most likely be among the top 3 seeds. But we're here instead. It's possible that the bubble is popping. The charts are visible to the owners. You don't need to be an NBA player to understand the drop since it's so clear. Without the one star the league should be defending at all costs, the trajectory is straight down, going from 3.1 million peaks to 1.3 million and NBA TV games fighting to surpass 200K. The actual kicker is right here. This goes beyond the here and now. Casual viewers find something else to watch each week when Clark is not around. They break the tuning in habit. Good luck regaining that habit once you've broken it. Particularly when the alternative is to watch teams full of celebrities that the average viewer wouldn't recognize by their first and last names. Clark and others are essentially the league's marketing. Additionally, viewers aren't interested in the second half of that line. This is where things get risky for the WNBA. TV networks are impatient and won't wait until our celebrity is well. ABC, CBS, and ESPN. They pay for reliable figures that aren't just terrific while our top draw is running. They begin to reconsider how many games they want to commit to next year after witnessing 1 million or more viewers disappear the instant Clark isn't in uniform. Because as a network executive, you are not investing in a product that will fail every time a player is late. You won't have any power in the next TV agreement if you do that, and it's not sustainable. The owners are aware of it. The league is aware of it. They're out here dangling phony game time decision updates to extract a brief ratings boost, rather than addressing the underlying issue and safeguarding the star who supports the entire enterprise. Let's be truthful. Everybody has seen this scam before. In sports, game time decisions usually indicate that they are not playing, although you might still purchase a ticket or watch in case. And it's effective. Maybe twice. Fans then pick up on it. They no longer trust you. And nothing lowers viewership more quickly than when fans believe you're just a publicity stunt. The WNBA's issue is that Caitlin Clark has been the hook for nearly all of it this season. Highlights, promotions, primetime slots, retail pushes, and what's left over once the hook has been removed. A number of teams that don't get as many spectators as certain state finals for high school boys basketball. That isn't even overstating things. There are games that break 250K on local streams. Next is growth, which is the league's favorite talking point. Oh, the expansion. All year long, we've heard it. The biggest season ever. Smashing attendance records and selling out of products. Here is the reality, though. If Clark is removed, the growth will contract more quickly than a balloon exposed to the sun. When it's actually one-player growth, it can't be referred to as league-wide growth. That would be like to claiming that basketball gained popularity thanks to the Bulls of the 1990s. No, Jordan increased basketball's appeal. Significant difference. This is what the WNBA is unwilling to discuss. The long-term harm. Suppose Clark is out for 2 more weeks. That's 2 more weeks of poor performance from primetime games. That's 2 more weeks of infrequent watchers developing new routines, engaging in other sports, or even avoiding basketball. Do you believe they will all return as soon as she is cleared? Yes, some will, but a significant portion are permanently lost. And the playoffs. Oh, the playoffs will be fascinating because what justification is there if Clark's return doesn't instantly boost numbers back to what they were in May? Well, we just need more time is not an acceptable response. No. If she has been the focus of the entire season's marketing, her return ought to be the ratings goldmine. If it isn't, that speaks something about the league's purported momentum. Let's not overlook the elephant in the room either. The officiating, the targeting, the defense, and the let's rough her up since the league won't stop us. This groin injury wasn't an isolated incident. After a minor bump, you don't limp around for weeks. You reach that point by maintaining continuous communication and avoiding the whistle that shields you from accumulated harm. Clark's absence from games would likely not even be a topic of discussion today if she had been officiated like a star from the start. She would be preparing for the upcoming appointment with Fever Sky. There would be more than 2 million viewers. And in front of every camera she could locate, Kathy Angelbert would be beaming. Rather, her product is losing viewers, and the media landscape is openly mocking the narrative of historic development. Additionally, it doesn't help that Angelry isn't there. Although the league was fortunate that the rivalry between Clark and Ree captivated spectators, neither player was shielded from the physical demands of the game. Now that both are out, the WNBA's premier game consists of just 2 mediocre teams without their best players, generating ratings that make network executives choose to call their golf buddies rather than watch the second half. That's a different matter entirely. Without Clark, the Fever are less competitive in addition to being less marketable. Defenses can focus on one or two alternatives without worrying about Clark pulling up from 28 feet, the attack is disorganized, and the spacing is worse. Basketball isn't enjoyable for casual viewers like that. They aren't watching a fourth-quarter turnover frenzy or half-court sets that end in the corner. What is the solution, then? In the short term, you should take use of the potential return aspect for as long as you can without alienating your supporters. Make it seem like she's close. Have her sign autographs and smile at the courtside.